kitchen. Morning light. A woman in a bonnet, arguing with a coffee machine under her breath, completely unaware she's being filmed. No music, no narration, just the image. 45 seconds of a woman, a machine, and a morning that looks like every other morning except it isn't. Then the screen cuts to black. One thought hangs in the air. This is the last frame of the documentary. This is where we're going. Here's how we got there. On a Tuesday in March, Maid Jackson, 25 years old, Howard University dropout, 847,000 TikTok followers, professional cleaning content creator known across the internet as Clean Queen Maid, posted a video of herself reorganizing a pantry. It was a good video. Great, actually. Satisfying. The kind of video people watched at 2 a.m. when their brain needed something that made sense. Color-coded containers sliding into perfect rows. Labels aligned. A hand smoothing down a shelf liner with the quiet authority of someone who understood that a clean space was not just clean. It was a statement. A philosophy. A whole way of moving through the world. Her followers loved it. They also noticed, in the background, what appeared to be a very illegal business meeting. Maid did not notice. She was focused on the labels. Her 847,000 followers, however, had nothing but time and very good eyesight, and within 3 hours, her comment section had become a fully operational true crime investigation. People were zooming into the background, enhancing the image, naming names with terrifying confidence, tagging journalists, tagging news outlets, tagging people who tagged other people who tagged entirely different people who had no connection to anything but arrived anyway because the internet is like that. Within 4 hours, it was a Reddit thread with over 2,000 comments. Within 4 hours and 20 minutes, Maid had read enough of those comments to understand that her pantry video had, somehow, catastrophically, become the most dangerous thing she had ever posted. She deleted every single social media account she owned in 4 minutes and 22 seconds flat. Then she sat on the floor of her apartment and prayed to every ancestor she had. Now here is the thing about Maid Jackson that is important to understand before this story goes any further. She was not a woman who panicked. She was not a woman who fell apart in a crisis. She had a 4.7 GPA at Howard before she dropped out. She had built a platform of nearly 1 million followers through precision, consistency, and a level of organizational discipline that made other content creators genuinely emotional. She was, by any reasonable measure, one of the most composed, strategically intelligent 25-year-olds in her field. She deleted her socials not because she was scared. She deleted them because her comment section had turned feral and she needed it to stop. The internet had taken her pantry video and turned it into a live investigation, and every second those accounts stayed active was another second the situation got worse. So she cut it. Clean. The way she did everything. She did not, however, know what to do next. So she did the only thing that made sense to her. She went to work. The following morning, Maid showed up to her cleaning job, a high-end residential account she had been servicing for 3 weeks, a sleek and impeccably furnished property on the better side of Seoul, with her cart, her supplies, her playlist loaded and ready, and the quiet professional focus of a woman who intended to clean her way back to something that resembled normalcy. She was not ready for what she found inside. A film crew, 2 cinematographers with equipment that cost more than her apartment, a craft services table with, among other things, an arrangement of shrimp that was genuinely impressive in its presentation, and a 6'1" Korean man in a $4,000 suit standing in her cleaning supply closet, the one she had organized on her first day, the one with the color-coded bottles and the labeled shelves and the tiered caddy system she had built from scratch because the previous setup had been, frankly, an embarrassment, standing in it with an expression on his face that could only be described as moved. Genuinely, quietly, aesthetically moved. Like he was looking at something that mattered. Maid stood in the doorway and took in the film crew, the cameras, the shrimp, and the suited man in her closet, and she made a very quick, very efficient assessment of the situation. Then she said, "Sir, are you the Mafia?" The man turned. He had the kind of face that was difficult to read, composed, precise, with eyes that processed everything at a speed that felt slightly unsettling. He looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "I prefer alternative enterprise sector." Maid absorbed this. "MMHM. And the cameras. You are being documented. I don't consent to that." He glanced toward the craft services table. "The craft services table has shrimp." Maid looked at the shrimp. She looked at the man. She looked at the shrimp again. The shrimp was, objectively, exceptional. There was a sauce situation happening on that table that she had not anticipated. She looked back at the man in the suit. "I want executive producer credit," she said. His name was Jang Doyun. He was 33 years old. He was the most feared man in Seoul's criminal underworld. A man who controlled 3 ports, a shipping empire, and a network of operations that his rivals had spent years trying to map and never quite managed. He was known for being impeccably dressed, terrifyingly calm, and possessed of a quiet, laser-focused intensity that made even the most seasoned businessmen feel like they were being evaluated and found slightly lacking. He was also, and this was the part that nobody in his operation knew, subscriber number 1 on Clean Queen Mada's TikTok. Notifications on every single video. He had discovered her content 8 months earlier during what he would later describe only as a difficult quarter. A stretch of 2 a.m. work nights and bad decisions and the particular kind of emptiness that comes from building something enormous and then waking up inside it and wondering if any of it meant anything. He had been scrolling, not really looking for anything, and then a video had appeared on his feed. A woman reorganizing a spice cabinet. Methodical, precise, completely focused on the thing in front of her with a kind of attention that suggested she genuinely believed this mattered. That this specific shelf in this specific order was worth doing right. He had watched 47 videos back to back that night. He had never told anyone this. The camera, as it would later turn out, knew. When his head of security had burst into his office the morning after the pantry video went viral, screaming about a potential witness, Doyun had been sitting at his desk, actively rewatching Mada reorganize a spice cabinet. He looked up slowly. He processed the information his head of security was delivering. He looked back at his phone. Then he said with complete sincerity, "I know. Hire her. Full-time. And get her ring light back." His second-in-command, a man named Kwon Sejin who had worked for Doyun for 8 years and had developed, as a result, a very specific kind of exhaustion, stared at him for 11 seconds. "Boss," Sejin said carefully, "that is either genius or the stupidest thing you have ever said." Doyun straightened his cufflinks. "Film it and find out." His logic, delivered completely deadpan to his bewildered team over the following hour, was this: a witness with a platform was a liability. A witness who was famous, genuinely famous, carefully and deliberately made famous, was something else entirely. Famous people protected their brand. Famous people had too much to lose to burn it on an exposé. If Mada Jackson became Clean Queen Mada again, bigger and more visible than before, then Mada Jackson's interests and their interests became the same interests. They would become her brand. She would become their insurance. His therapist would later call this catastrophically misplaced creativity. His therapist was correct. But it was also, in the particular way that Doyun's plans tended to be, not entirely wrong. And so Mada Jackson found herself standing in a cleaning supply closet being filmed by 2 cinematographers while a crime boss in a $4,000 suit looked at her color-coded bottles like they were the most beautiful thing he had ever seen in his 33 years on Earth. She negotiated executive producer credit before she had even put down her mop. That night, alone in the room they had prepared for her in the compound. Clean, well-appointed, with a nightstand and good light and a first-edition book that had appeared from nowhere with a single sentence underlined. Mada opened a fresh notes app on her phone and typed, "Entry 1. Have accepted shrimp from a crime boss. This is fine. This is completely fine." She paused. The shrimp was exceptional. She put her phone face down on the nightstand. She lay on her back and looked at the ceiling. Under the bed, neatly packed, was a go bag. On her phone, already booked, was a Thursday flight out of Incheon. She had a plan. The plan was simple. She would stay long enough to understand what she had walked into, gather whatever information she needed, and leave on Thursday. She picked up the first edition, found the underlined sentence, read it twice. She put the book down, looked at the ceiling again. She did not leave on Thursday. The compound had its own ecosystem, and within 72 hours Mada had mapped every corner of it. Not because she was gathering intelligence, though she was absolutely gathering intelligence and logging it in a mental folder she had labeled things I will use when necessary. She was mapping it because she cleaned it, and Mada cleaned the way other people breathed. Automatically, completely, with a thoroughness that left no corner untouched and no surface unassessed. By the end of her 3rd day, she knew which floorboard in the East Wing announced someone's approach from 14 feet away. She knew where the light came in best in the morning and which rooms held on to cold and which ones ran warm. She knew the compound the way you know a place you've decided to understand. She also knew, within those same 72 hours, that she was not dealing with ordinary people. The lieutenants were the first to find this out. 3 of them arrived in the kitchen on her second morning with the specific energy of men who had been sent to make her understand something about the situation she was in. They positioned themselves in the doorway. They crossed their arms. They said things that were designed to land with a certain weight. Mata was reorganizing the spice cabinet. She did not look up. She said, without pausing her work, "The problem with this setup is that you've organized alphabetically but you're using frequency of use as the actual logic. So cumin is in the wrong place and has been since someone set this up, and that someone was wrong." She moved the cumin. "If you want to have a conversation," she continued, "I'm available in about 7 minutes. If you want to stand in the doorway looking large, that's also fine, but I'm going to need you to move slightly left because you're blocking the light on the second shelf." The 3 men looked at each other. They moved slightly left. By the end of that conversation, which lasted considerably longer than 7 minutes, 2 of them knew the difference between sanded and unsanded grout. 1 of them had asked a follow-up question about tile sealing, and all 3 of them had eaten the banana bread Mata had stress-baked at 6 a.m. because the situation had felt unmanageable and stress-baking was how she managed unmanageable situations. Sejin filed a memo that afternoon. It read, in part, "The subject has reorganized the kitchen. Staff morale is at the highest recorded level in 14 months. Recommend continued employment indefinitely. Also, the banana bread was exceptional." Doyoon read this memo. He added it to the growing folder on his desk that he was not yet ready to name. He went to watch the kitchen footage from that morning. He watched it for 40 minutes. He opened his Moleskine. Day 3. She reorganized the spice cabinet while 3 of my best men stood in the doorway trying to intimidate her. She did not flinch. She moved the cumin. I've been thinking about that for 2 hours. This was the thing about Doyoon that his rivals never quite understood, and that made him more dangerous than any of them accounted for. He did not rule through fear alone. He ruled through attention. He paid attention to everything. Patterns, anomalies, the thing that didn't fit, the detail that revealed the larger structure. It was what made him an extraordinary crime boss. It was also what made him, in the specific context of Mata Jackson, completely and immediately useless, because the moment he started paying attention to her, he could not stop, and everything she did turned out to be interesting. The way she moved through a room. The specific order in which she approached a cleaning task. Always perimeter first, then inward, like she was solving a problem rather than completing a chore. The playlist, because there was always a playlist, non-negotiable, and it had a system that he had not yet fully decoded but was working on. The way she talked to the compound staff, which was exactly the same way she talked to him. Directly, without deference, with a particular kind of warmth that didn't soften the edges of what she was saying but made you feel, somehow, that being told the truth was a gift. He started filming immediately. He could not stop filming. The documentary, as a result, began to take on a quality that his crew recognized but could not quite name. Every shot of Mata, mopping a hallway, reorganizing a filing cabinet, standing at the kitchen counter with coffee and a book, was lit and framed with an attention that felt less like documentation and more like something else. Something that had no professional name. His editor, a meticulous man who had worked in documentary film for 15 years, reviewed the first week of footage and made a note in his own journal that read simply, "He's in trouble." Then he crossed it out. Then he wrote it again. Meanwhile, Mata was keeping her own records. Entry 7. I hate it here. The shrimp is still good. He filmed me mopping for 40 minutes today. There was a string quartet involved. I did not consent to the string quartet. I have concerns. Entry 9. He left notes on my cleaning playlist. Actual notes. In a notebook. He said track 7 creates a tonal inconsistency. I said it's my playlist. He produced a chart. It had a legend. Entry 12. He watched me organize the East Wing filing cabinet from the security camera. For 2 hours. He thinks I don't know. I know. Entry 14. He left me a book. There is a sentence underlined. I am not going to think about which sentence or why. I am going to sleep. I am going to leave on Thursday. She did not leave on Thursday. What happened instead was this. 3 weeks into her employment, Doyoon called Mata into the screening room to watch the first rough cut of the documentary. It was 58 minutes long. She was in 49 of them. There was a 12-minute sequence of her making coffee that was shot and scored like the opening of a prestige HBO drama. A live Seoul Philharmonic recording swelled underneath footage of Mata pressing the button on a coffee machine with the same unhurried precision she brought to everything. The narration, written by Doyoon, read by Doyoon, approved by no one except Doyoon, described her wiping down a countertop as an act of quiet rebellion against a world that does not deserve her precision. Mata sat in the screening room in complete silence for a very long time after it ended. Then she turned to Doyoon, who was sitting beside her with the focused, slightly vulnerable energy of a man waiting for a verdict he had convinced himself he was prepared for. "Doyoon," she said. "Yes, this is not a documentary. It is. This is a 49-minute portrait of me making coffee and cleaning baseboards set to a string quartet. The string quartet was sourced from a live Seoul Philharmonic recording. I don't care if it was sourced from God himself. You have a 12-minute coffee sequence. The light was exceptional that morning. Doyoon." He straightened his cufflinks. "The pacing is deliberate." What happened next was the thing that Mata would think about later, alone in her room, looking at the ceiling the way she had started doing with alarming frequency. Doyoon reached into the bag beside his chair and produced a document. Formatted, printed, bound in a folder with the quiet authority of a man who had spent considerable time on this and was not apologizing for it. He placed it on the table in front of her. It was 17 pages long. It had footnotes. One footnote on page 4. Read. See also, the way she holds the mop as an expression of controlled intentionality. Mata read page 4. She read it twice. She closed the folder very carefully, set it on the table with both hands and said, "I need you to go to therapy. I am currently in therapy. Then I need your therapist to go to therapy." The editor, who had been standing in the back of the room pretending to be invisible, quietly began updating his resume. The argument that followed lasted 2 hours and covered documentary ethics, the nature of the subject-filmmaker relationship, the cultural significance of Beyoncé, the specific light quality of that particular Tuesday morning, and whether the phrase controlled intentionality was a compliment or a diagnosis. At one point Doyoon said, with a heat that surprised both of them, "About you," and then stopped, hard, like he had walked into a wall he hadn't seen coming. The room went very quiet. Doyoon looked at the wall. Mata looked at Doyoon. The editor looked at the ceiling and began composing his resignation letter in his head. "About your work," Doyoon finished, smoothly, making full eye contact with nothing. Mata got editorial rights. Doyoon negotiated to keep the coffee sequence but agreed to cut it to 4 minutes. He sulked about this for 11 days. When he delivered the cut, it was 4 minutes and 22 seconds long. Mata noticed the extra 22 seconds the moment she watched it back. She said nothing. She let him have it. This was the first truly romantic thing that happened in the story, and nobody in the room recognized it as romantic. The editor recognized it. He finished his resume that afternoon and did not submit it, because something about this project had started to feel like it might be worth seeing through to the end. The playlist conflict arrived shortly after and was, if anything, worse. Doyoon had listened to Mata's full cleaning playlist during a late-night edit session and arrived the following morning with notes. Written notes. In the Moleskine, he had mapped her cleaning output against the playlist sequence and produced a color-coded chart, with a legend, demonstrating that track 7 created a tonal inconsistency with tracks 5 and 6 and disrupted what he had identified as her most productive cleaning window. He also, somehow, had written 3 pages on the cultural significance of Beyoncé in the context of Black American labor traditions and their relationship to dignity and self-determination. 3 pages, with citations, at 2 a.m., because Mata had a playlist he wanted to understand. Mata read all 3 pages with her eye twitching at a frequency that suggested significant internal activity. She closed the Moleskine. She looked at him. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "I did research." "You researched Beyoncé." "I research everything relevant to the documentary." "Beyoncé is relevant to your documentary." "You are relevant to my documentary." "Beyoncé is relevant to you. Therefore." Do not finish that sentence with therefore. He closed the Moleskine. Track 11. Position 4. Consider it. Mata did not change the playlist. She added track 11 to position 4 just to see what would happen, fully prepared to be annoyed that nothing would. Her productivity during that cleaning window went up by a measurable amount and she was furious about it for the rest of the week. She told no one. Doyoon noticed it in the footage during playback, said nothing, and nodded once to himself with the quiet satisfaction of a man who had been right and knew it and was gracious enough not to say so out loud. Mata, watching him nod from across the room, made a sound that was somewhere between a sigh and a scream and went back to the kitchen. She opened her phone. She started a new list. She titled it, Things Doyoon Did That Were Surprisingly Human. Entry 1 researched Beyoncé. 3 pages. In the Moleskine, he used footnotes. She stared at the title for a moment. Then she put her phone in her pocket and went back to work. She did not examine what it meant that she had started the list. She was very deliberately not examining that. What she was examining that same week was the East Wing. There was a room in the East Wing that Mata had been told, explicitly, repeatedly, and with a specific quiet seriousness that was somehow more effective than shouting, never to enter. She lasted 9 days. On day 10, the door was ajar. There was visible dust on the threshold. Mata stood in the hallway and looked at the dust. The dust looked back. She looked at it for approximately 4 seconds, which was 3 seconds longer than she normally gave dust the courtesy of consideration, and then she went in. It was a war room, maps on every wall, files stacked on long tables, an operational chart covering an entire surface with the organized complexity of something that had been built and rebuilt over years. And in the center of it all, a board, photographs connected by red and blue and green string in patterns that told stories she wasn't supposed to read. She cleaned it, all of it, in 2.5 hours. She also, because she was Mata Jackson and this was simply what she did, reorganized the filing system, labeled every folder and surface, consolidated the 3 overlapping map systems into a single master chart that was cleaner and more navigable than the original by a significant margin, and color-coded the string on the photograph board according to what she could see were different relationship types. Red for adversarial, blue for transactional, green for something more complicated that she filed under figure this out later and moved on. She was back in the kitchen making lunch when Doyoon walked in. The compound went very quiet. Not all at once. It happened in stages, like a sound system powering down room by room, as people registered the expression on Doyoon's face and made the quiet professional decision to be somewhere else. Doyoon appeared in the kitchen doorway. He looked at Mata. Mata looked at him. The silence between them had texture and weight. "I used your label maker," she said. "I'll replace the tape." He stepped fully into the kitchen. His face was doing the thing it did when he was processing something that required more than his standard composure, a particular stillness around the jaw, a quality of attention that was somehow more focused than his usual already unsettling focus. "You were not supposed to be in that room," he said. The dust situation disagreed. "Mata, that room contains. I know what it contains. I color-coded it. Red string is adversarial relationships. Blue is transactional. Green is the complicated ones that don't fit the other categories." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I know what the colors mean. I was there when you—" He stopped. The kitchen went very, very still. Mata set down the knife she was using and turned to face him fully. "Were you watching me on the cameras?" The silence lasted 1 second longer than it should have. "You watched me reorganize your crime board on camera," she said. Her voice was not loud. It was something more effective than loud. "It's a security system. For 2 hours. I was monitoring for. Did you take notes?" The pause was 1 full second too long. "Doyoon." "The label placement on the sole operation file," he said, with the extraordinary dignity of a man who had committed to a position and was seeing it through regardless of the personal cost, "is slightly off-center. I would have done it differently." What Doyoon did not tell Mata, what he read in Sejin's security report that evening, alone in his office with the particular stillness of a man absorbing information that restructures something, was this personal note. "She found the Busan leak in 40 minutes by accident. We have been looking for it for 3 months." He read this line 3 times. He folded the report. He put it in his desk. He went to watch the war room footage again, not the security footage of her entry but the hour after when she was already gone and the room was reorganized and he had walked through it alone, opening file after file, following the new system with a thoroughness that he told himself was assessment, and that was, in fact, something closer to wonder. He did not tell Mata about the Busan problem. He told himself it was because the information was operationally sensitive. He was not ready to examine other possible reasons. 2 weeks later, Mata figured it out herself. She was reorganizing a secondary file cabinet in the West Corridor when she found a loose paper that had been misfiled, and the thread it connected to led her, in the methodical way she approached all problems, to something she recognized immediately as a significant discrepancy. She stood in the corridor for a moment. Then she took out her phone. Entry 95. Accidentally solved his biggest problem. He didn't tell me he knew. He's embarrassed. This is so funny. I hate it here. She did not, however, leave on Thursday. What happened on that particular Thursday was this. Mata was in the car. Keys in the ignition. Go bag on the back seat. Packed with the efficiency of someone who had rehearsed this exact scenario 17 times. The compound gate was open for a delivery. She could drive through it right now. She had thought about this moment. She knew exactly what she would do. She sat in the car for 4 minutes. Then the passenger door opened. Doyun got in. He was holding 2 coffees. He handed one to her. He looked straight ahead through the windshield at the open gate, at the street beyond it, at the particular quality of Thursday morning light. He did not say anything about the go bag on the back seat. He did not say anything about the running engine or the open gate or the fact that it was Thursday and had been Thursday every week for 17 weeks. He just handed her the coffee and looked forward. I've been thinking about the third act, he said. Mata stared at his profile. Doyun, I was leaving. I know. I had a flight. Incheon. 4:55 p.m. Window seat. He sipped his coffee. You always book a window seat. A silence that was doing an enormous amount of work spread through the car. You looked up my flight, she said. I look up all flights leaving on Thursdays. She stopped. That is insane. It's practical. It's unhinged. The third act, he continued, as if she hadn't spoken, with the calm of a man who had made a decision and arrived somewhere on the other side of it. Needs something that explains why you stayed, not for the audience, for the record. Mata turned and looked at him fully. He was still looking through the windshield. His jaw was doing the particular set it got when he had a feeling he was attempting to categorize and the feeling was declining to cooperate. This is the part, she said slowly, where you tell me to stay. A very long pause. This is the part, he said, where I tell you the coffee is from that place on Mapogu that you mentioned 3 weeks ago, and I had someone drive 40 minutes to get it. Mata looked at the coffee. She looked at him. She looked at the open gate. The gate was right there. The flight was in 4 hours. The go bag was on the back seat. Everything she had planned was within reach. She turned off the engine. I want that in writing, she said. The 40 minutes. I'll have it notarized. She missed her flight. She rescheduled for the following Thursday. She did not take that one either. She stopped booking Thursday flights after week 22 and told herself it was because the airline had changed their cancellation policy. She told this lie to her journal. Her journal did not believe her. She knew her journal didn't believe her. She started writing in code. The code was not good. What she did not stop doing, however, was fighting Doyun about the documentary. The creative control argument was ongoing, evolving, and conducted with the particular energy of 2 highly intelligent people who disagreed about everything on the surface and agreed about everything underneath and were not yet ready to talk about the underneath. Episode 4 of the documentary was supposed to be a standard talking head interview. Mata on camera, Doyun behind it. The established format. The one thing that had not yet been contested. Mata showed up, sat in the chair, looked at the camera and said, I want to interview you. Doyun looked up from the viewfinder. That is not the format. I'm changing the format. You're the subject. You filmed me for 42 days. She crossed her legs with the energy of someone who had made a decision and was comfortable in it. I have 8 minutes of you on camera and 6 of those are the back of your head. Sit down, Doyun. He did not sit down for 11 minutes. He explained, at considerable length and with genuine intellectual investment, why the interviewer remaining off camera was a deliberate structural choice that created asymmetric intimacy and positioned the subject as the active agent of her own narrative. It was a coherent argument. It was also, Mata recognized immediately, a very sophisticated way of saying he did not want to be looked at. She listened to all of it patiently. "That's a very long way to say you're scared," she said. "I'm not. Sit down." He sat down. He sat like a man who had never been the subject of sustained, direct, genuinely curious attention before, which was, Mata would later reflect, almost exactly what was happening. Doyoon lived behind glass, behind the camera, behind the composure and the suit and the cufflinks. He straightened when he needed a second to find himself. Nobody looked at him the way she was looking at him right now, like he was worth figuring out. It was, she would write that night, the most uncomfortable she had ever seen him. And she had seen him in some situations. "Why did you start watching my videos?" she asked. "For the documentary. You started watching 8 months before I worked here." Silence. "Why did you keep watching?" Longer silence. "Doyoon." He looked at the camera. He looked at the floor. He looked at his hands. He said, finally, in the voice of a man making a small concession that was actually enormous. The organizational systems were instructive. "You watched a 40-minute video about bathroom grout at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday," Mata said, "for professional development. I work unusual hours." Doyoon. The interview lasted 3 hours. In 3 hours, Mata Jackson extracted more honest answers from Jang Doyoon than his therapist had managed in 2 years. His therapist, upon hearing about this secondhand through a mutual contact 3 months later, said, "Of course she did," with an exhaustion that made clear this was exactly what she had been expecting and had been unable to produce herself. The interview went places nobody had planned. It went to the question of why someone with everything he had built still woke up at 3 a.m. and found the ceiling more interesting than sleep. It went to the question of what it meant to make something, really make something, something that mattered, something true. It went, carefully and sideways, to the question of what had made him pick up a camera in the first place. "I wanted to keep something," he said, with a simplicity that was so unguarded it sat strangely in the air. "Something real. I wanted there to be a record." "A record of what?" He was quiet for a long time. "Of something worth recording," he said finally. The room was very still. Mata looked at him. He was looking at the camera, and his face had that quality it got sometimes. The quality that appeared when all the composure had been used up on something else and there was none left for disguising what was underneath. He looked, in that moment, like someone she recognized. Someone tired of performing an enormity and wanting, more than anything, something small and true and real. She said, "What do you want to make next?" He was quiet. For the longest he had been quiet all afternoon. "Something real," he said. "I want to make something that's just real." He did not look at her when he said it. But she heard it. The camera heard it. The editor, watching through the glass partition with the particular alertness of someone who understood exactly what they were witnessing, reached for his notebook. He wrote 4 words. He underlined them twice. He closed the notebook and did not reopen it for the rest of the session. The words were, "It's over for him." Mata did not add what Doyoon said to the phone list. She did not add it to the journal. She went back to her room that evening and lay on her back and looked at the ceiling and held the thing he'd said in a place that didn't have a category yet. Some things you don't write down because writing them down makes them real. Some things are already real. You just need a moment to sit with that. She sat with it. Then she went back to work. The 3rd floor room was the next thing. There was a room on the 3rd floor that Doyoon had asked Mata not to clean. Not in a threatening way. Not with any of the specific weight that his requests usually carried. He had said it quietly, carefully, standing in the hallway outside the closed door, and there had been something in the way he said it that was different from every other request she had received in this compound. Something that felt less like a boundary being enforced and more like something being protected. "Please don't clean that room," he had said. No explanation. Mata, who genuinely respected this, lasted 31 days. On day 32 the door was not fully closed. She could see, through the gap, a surface with visible dust. She was inside the room in 45 seconds. It was a studio. Editing equipment, a projector, a wall of screens. 4 of them arranged in a row, each one paused mid-frame. All of it was Mata. Not the documentary footage she had reviewed and approved and argued about. Not the official interviews or the organized shoots. Personal footage. Mata laughing at something off-frame, head thrown back, the kind of laugh she had when she forgot she was being watched. Mata in the armchair by the window reading, one leg tucked under her, turning a page. Mata at 7 a.m. in her bonnet, standing in the kitchen, having a focused and deeply felt argument with the coffee machine about what she characterized as its fundamental betrayal of their relationship. She had not known anyone could see her. She had not known any of it had been filmed. Doyoon was sitting in the editing chair at the far end of the room. He had not heard the door. He was watching one of the screens with the concentrated stillness she recognized as his deepest attention. Not the professional attention he brought to operations and decisions, but the other kind. The one that looked like something she did not have a name for yet. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Mata said, very quietly, "How long has this room been here?" He turned. His face went through something, a sequence of adjustments, a rapid reassessment of the situation, and then, because he was Doyoon and he was constitutionally incapable of pretending something was not what it was, a settling into the truth. "Since the beginning," he said. "Of the documentary?" Pause that was exactly one beat too long. "Of the documentary." Mata looked at the screens. She looked at the footage of herself laughing. She looked at the footage of herself reading. She looked at herself arguing with a coffee machine at 7 a.m. in her bonnet with the passionate intensity of a woman who had been profoundly betrayed. "This isn't for the documentary," she said. Not a question. Doyoon stood. He was across the room from her, and he had the look he got when he was trying to find a logical explanation for something that didn't have one and finding, instead, only the truth. She had seen this look 3 times before. Each time he had managed to redirect before it arrived anywhere. This time it had nowhere to go. "I didn't want to lose the footage," he said. "What footage?" The pause was the longest pause in the conversation so far. "All of it. Any of it." Mata stared at him. Something was moving through her face too. She could feel it, the thing she normally had under control, the thing she was excellent at redirecting. She let it move because she was tired, genuinely tired, of redirecting the things she felt about this man in this compound and this whole entire impossible situation. "You are the most dramatic man," she said, in a voice that was trying to be dry and not quite making it, "that I have ever encountered in my entire life. I'm not dramatic. You built a private screening room. It's a standard editing suite. To watch footage of me arguing with a coffee machine. The lighting in that shot is exceptional. Doyoon." He was quiet. Then he crossed to the computer and pulled up a clip. 45 seconds. Mata in her bonnet at 7 a.m. The coffee machine. The particular focused fury of a woman who expected a machine to do its job and was not receiving what she had been promised. The lighting, she had to admit, was exceptional. She looked incredible, and she was just standing there in a bonnet at 7 a.m. calling a coffee machine a betrayal device. She watched it, and despite everything, despite the room and the screens and the 31 days and the footage she hadn't known existed, she laughed. The real laugh. The room-filling one that she couldn't manufacture or perform, that happened on its own when something hit her in the right place. Doyoon watched her laugh. He looked like a man who had just lost something and, in the same moment, found something that mattered more. She cleaned the room anyway. She organized his editing files. She labeled the folders with his label maker. She did not leave. He watched her work from the editing chair and did not try to stop her, and when she was almost done he picked up the label maker and made one label and walked to the shelf above the main screen and pressed it into place. It said Mata. She looked at it. She looked at him. He looked back. Neither of them said anything. From downstairs the coffee machine made a sound. "I have to go deal with that," she said. "I know." She left. She came back 20 minutes later with 2 coffees. She sat in the second chair. He didn't say anything. She didn't say anything. They watched the footage together in the edited suite with the label on the shelf above them until the light outside changed and the compound went quiet. That night she wrote, "Entry 96, he has a whole room. A whole room. Lord. The label says Mata. I keep it dusted. I am not going to write about why I keep it dusted. Moving on." She kept it dusted every week. She never wrote about why. The documentary wrapped 3 weeks later. The final cut was completed by Doyoon alone, at 3 a.m., in the room on the 3rd floor. When it was done he sat in the editing chair and did not move for a while. Then he opened the Moleskine and wrote an entry. The reader would not see this entry until much later. What they would see first was the email, printed, slid across the breakfast table at precisely 7:43 a.m. the following Tuesday, timed deliberately to arrive after Mada's first coffee because he had learned, from footage and observation and 123 days of paying attention, that she did not process significant information well before the first coffee. Mada picked it up. She read it. She read it again. She set it down. Doyun. This is Sundance. Yes. You submitted our documentary to Sundance. Technically, I submitted your documentary. Our documentary, she stopped, picked the email up again. We got into Sundance. Yes. You knew about this. I was notified yesterday. And you waited until, she checked the time on the kitchen clock, 7:43 a.m. to tell me. You don't process information well before your first coffee. She stared at him. He was looking at his coffee with the practiced neutrality of a man who was not going to volunteer anything further. He was the most infuriating person she had ever met in 25 years of encountering people. He had also, quietly and without announcement, made a film about her that Sundance wanted to show to the world. I want a new dress, she said. Already arranged. I want to write my own remarks. Obviously. And Doyun. She pointed at him. You're coming. On camera. Actual camera. Face visible. The longest pause in the history of that kitchen. I'll consider it. You'll do it. I said I'll consider. Sejin. Kwon Sejin appeared in the doorway in approximately 1 second. He had been in the hallway. He was always in the hallway when things were happening, a quality that had initially seemed like surveillance and had turned out to be something more like loyalty. He looked at Mada. He looked at Doyun. Doyun looked at him with an expression that said very clearly and specifically, do not answer this question. Sejin, who had 4,200,000 Korean wons riding on the outcome of this relationship and had made peace with the fact that he would do whatever it took to collect it, looked at Mada. Yes, Sejin said. He is. Doyun straightened his cufflinks with the energy of a man renegotiating terms in a situation that had already been decided. The documentary premiered on a Thursday. Mada noticed it was a Thursday. She did not say anything about this. She put on the new dress, deep green, excellent construction, the kind of thing that said I made something worth dressing up for, and she sat next to Doyun in the festival theater and watched the opening frame appear on screen. Kitchen. Morning light. A woman in a bonnet arguing with a coffee machine, completely unaware she was being filmed. The audience laughed softly, then went quiet, then stayed quiet in the particular way audiences go quiet when something on screen is asking them to pay a different kind of attention. Mada watched herself on the screen. She watched the lighting, and it was exceptional. She had to admit it was exceptional, the way the morning came through the window and caught the edges of things. The way whoever was behind the camera had understood exactly where to stand to make a woman in a bonnet at 7 a.m. look like someone worth watching. She watched herself move through the documentary, cleaning, talking, laughing, reorganizing things with the focused authority she brought to every task, and she felt, for the first time, what it was like to be truly seen. Not watched. Not documented. Seen. The film was, by any possible measure, extraordinary. Critics would later write about its intimacy, its luminosity, its quality of sustained and generous attention. They would write about what it felt like to watch a woman find genuine meaning in work the world had decided didn't count, and to feel, through the quality of the filmmaking, that the decision had been wrong. One review, published the morning after the premiere, said, "We do not know who is behind the camera. Whoever they are in love with their subject. This is not a criticism. This may, in fact, be the whole point." In the car on the way to the after-party, that review was open on both their phones. Mada had read it 3 times. Doyun had read it an indeterminate number of times and was pretending he hadn't. Neither of them looked at the other. The car moved through the festival town streets, and the silence between them was doing more work than anything said out loud since the documentary had ended. Her remarks at the premiere had been everything she'd wanted them to be. She had stood at the podium in the deep green dress and talked about her work, about what it meant to find dignity in the thing you did, to bring your full attention to something the world walked past without looking down. She talked about being seen, about the difference between being watched and being witnessed. The audience had given her a standing ovation, and during the ovation she had looked into the wings where Doyun was standing, on camera, face visible as promised, and he was looking at her with the expression. The one that wasn't complicated. The one that was, in fact, extraordinarily simple, and that he had no idea was on his face. The camera, operated by someone else for the first time in months, caught it. This frame would become the most discussed image from the film. Critics would use words like unguarded and devastating. Audiences would screenshot it. The silence that followed was approximately 3 seconds long and contained the weight of 147 days. Go ahead, Mata said. No, please, Doyun gestured. No. Finish your sentence. You were speaking. Doyun, finish the sentence. The journalist had stopped breathing. The recorder was still running. Across the room, Sejin had his hand over his mouth. The betting pool chat, which had been dormant for 3 weeks, showed 17 unread messages. Doyun looked at Mata. Mata looked at Doyun. He opened his mouth. He started, "She is my," and his jaw did the thing, and his hand moved toward his cufflinks, and he looked sideways at nothing, and he said, "She is the subject of the documentary." The journalist nodded and moved on. Sejin, across the room, closed his eyes with the specific expression of a man who has watched the same near-miss from slightly different angles for 5 months. Mata very quietly, to no one in particular, said, "Unbelievable." She put her glass down with one careful, controlled motion. She walked away, not out, just away, to the balcony. Doyun followed her. He was through the balcony door 14 seconds after her, which was 14 seconds of him standing inside looking at her through the glass with an expression that had finally, definitively, run out of its usual management, and then walking through the door because there was nothing else to do. She was standing at the railing looking at the city. She did not turn when she heard him come out. "Mata, I'm not doing this right now. I know. You had one sentence." She turned around. Her eyes were bright with something that was not tears and was not quite anger either. Something more like the feeling of arriving at the end of a very long road and finding it was not, after all, the end. "One sentence, Doyun. The journalist handed it to you on a plate. I'm aware. She is my," and then nothing. "You cuff-linked yourself out of it." "I don't," he stopped. "Cuff-linked is not a verb. I just made it one." She stepped away from the railing. "Do you know how many times I have watched you almost say it? I have a list. It is 97 entries long. I categorized them." He stared at her. "You have a list. By date and context. Don't you dare say that's very organized. I will throw this clutch bag into the city." He closed his mouth. She pointed at him. Her voice was steady and clear and had the quality it got when she was saying something true and knew it and was not going to look away from it. "I stayed. I want you to understand that. I had 23 flights and I stayed. I reorganized your entire life. I let you film me. I watched you build a whole room, and I stayed. And I need you to." She stopped. She took a breath. "I need you to finish one sentence. Just one. That's all I'm asking." Doyun looked at her. The city light was behind her and the night air was cool, and she was standing there in the deep green dress with 97 entries and 23 flights and 6 months of staying between them. And he looked at her the way he had looked at her from behind every camera he had ever pointed in her direction, which was the same way he looked at things that mattered to him. Completely, without defense. He reached into his jacket. He produced the Moleskine. Mata looked at the Moleskine. "If you read from that notebook, I will." "Page 1, he said. "Doyun. Day 1. He opened it. She came in and looked at the dust on the threshold like it had personally offended her. I've never seen anyone look at dust like that. I filmed 11 minutes of it. I'm keeping all 11 minutes. Mata's mouth closed. He turned a page. Day 14. She reorganized my bookshelf by emotional theme instead of author. It's more accurate than anything I've done. I've been thinking about this for 3 days. I'm still thinking about it. He turned another page. Day 31. She laughed at something Sejin said at dinner and the whole room changed. I don't know how to put that in the documentary without it being obvious. It's already obvious. I don't know what to do about it. He looked up. Day 47. He held her gaze. She's leaving on Thursday. She's not going to leave on Thursday. I don't know how I know that. I know because she came back for her coffee and she didn't have to and she did. I've watched that clip. He paused. I've watched that clip a significant number of times. How many times? Mata said. A significant number. Doyun. 81. The number landed quietly. 81 times. The city spread out below them. Mata stared at him. He closed the moleskine. He looked at her with the expression from the wings. The simple one, the uncomplicated one, the one the camera had caught. And he said, finally, after 97 near misses and 23 Thursday flights and 4 journal volumes and 1 whole room and a label that said Mata on a shelf in a studio that had existed since the beginning, she is mine. That's what I was going to say. To the journalist. To anyone. She is mine and I am. His hand moved toward his cufflinks. Mata grabbed it before it got there. Don't you dare, she said. He looked down at her hand on his. He looked up at her. Something moved across his face. The composure cracked, just at the edges, just enough, and underneath it was something she recognized because she had been carrying the same thing for 6 months. I've been trying to say it for 97 entries, he said quietly. I know. I was there for all 97. I'm not good at. I know. I built a room. I know, Doyun. I had someone drive 40 minutes for coffee. I know. I watched the coffee machine clip 81. Doyun. She stepped forward. Finish the last sentence. He looked at her. His jaw did the thing. His hand, underneath hers, turned over. I am entirely, operationally, catastrophically. Say it like a human being. I'm gone on you. A pause. Completely. Since day one. Possibly since the Spice Cabinet video at 2 a.m. 8 months before you walked through my door, which I recognize is a lot. Mata looked at him for a long, still moment. The Spice Cabinet video, she said slowly, has 400,000 views. I account for 11 of them. 11. I was doing research. Also, and this was entry 147 and she wrote it that same night and it was one sentence and she did not annotate it, because she had been thinking about it since approximately day 12 and she was tired of waiting. He was very still for exactly 1 second. Then he was not still at all. The moleskine hit the floor. Neither of them noticed. From inside the afterparty, Kwon Sejin watched it happen through the balcony window. He stood there for a moment with his hand still over his mouth. Then he lowered his hand. Then he picked up his phone with the careful deliberateness of a man completing a transaction he had been waiting on for 5 months and opened the betting pool chat. He typed, "Mop free." She kissed him. "Pay up." 17 crying emojis arrived simultaneously. Sejin collected 4,200,000 Korean wons. He told Doyun about the betting pool 2 weeks later, over breakfast, with the energy of a man who had calculated the exact moment when this information would be funny rather than a firing offense. Doyun looked at him for a very long time across the table. "You ran a betting pool," he said. "No. Sejin. The mop option was at 3:1 odds, boss. I had to hedge." Doyun looked at him for another long moment. Then he looked at his coffee. Something moved at the corner of his mouth, the small, rare curve that his team had spent years trying to decode. "How much did you win?" he asked. "That's not." Sejin. 4.2 million won. Donate 100,000 to whatever Mata asks for next. Sejin reached into his jacket and produced, already prepared, a receipt. "I already did. The good cleaning supplies she requested in week 2 that got lost in procurement." He set it on the table. "I anticipated." Doyun looked at the receipt. He looked at Sejin. "When did you do this?" "Before I sent the text." There was a pause in which Doyun assessed his second-in-command with the full weight of his attention. Then he said, "You're getting a raise." "I know," said Sejin. "I've been waiting for you to notice that too." The morning after the balcony was quiet. It was the first morning in 147 days that was simply, uncomplicatedly, quietly good. No go bag. No Thursday flight. No list with entries that needed cataloging. No footage to review or narration to rewrite or playlist charts to contest. Just the compound kitchen, good light, 2 coffees, from the place on Mapogu, always from the place on Mapogu now, and the particular stillness of 2 people who have finally stopped managing the distance between them. Mata sat across the table from Doyun and watched him read. He was not performing reading. He was actually reading, the book open at an angle that caught the morning light, his attention complete, his face in its natural state of focused composure that no longer felt like something being concealed so much as something she had been given access to. She knew this face now. She knew what it looked like when he was thinking versus when he was feeling versus when he was about to say something true and was taking a moment to find the right architecture for it. She knew him the way she knew the compound, the way you know somewhere that has become yours. She picked up her phone. She opened the list. She scrolled to the bottom and added entry 98. Entry 98. He is not that surprising anymore. She put the phone down. She did not delete the list. 6 months later, Clean Queen Mata returned. Not with an announcement. Not with a comeback post or a press release or a coordinated re-entry strategy. Just a video dropped on a Tuesday with no caption except a single mop emoji. The kitchen was immaculate. The ring light was positioned at the angle she had always preferred. Mata moved through the frame with the same quiet authority she had always had. Organized, precise, completely focused on the thing in front of her, treating the work with the full weight of her attention because that was how she had always done it and that was not going to change. In the background, barely visible, slightly out of focus, a man in a very good suit was sitting at the kitchen table with a Moleskine open in front of him. He was not reading it. He was watching her. The way he always watched her, completely without defense, with the quality of attention that did not extract but held. She had left him in the frame. On purpose. In the light she knew was exceptional in the morning. The comments section broke within 4 hours. Wait, is that the documentary man? He's just sitting there watching her clean. I have been crying for 20 minutes, someone help. This is the most romantic thing I have ever seen in my life. Mata read the comments. She showed Doyun. He read them. He read them again with the focused thoroughness he brought to things that mattered. And when he looked up, his face had the particular quality of a man arriving somewhere he had not expected to arrive. They can see me, he said. Yes. You left me in the frame. Yes. He looked at her. She looked at him. She was trying very hard not to smile and failing completely. The smile breaking through the way her real laugh broke through, on its own because the thing causing it was genuine and couldn't be managed. This was deliberate, he said. The lighting was exceptional. The silence between them filled up with something warm and unhurried. The kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. He picked up the Moleskine. He opened to a new page. He wrote something. She watched his hand move across the paper with the same attention she always paid to things that interested her, and he turned it to face her. Day 1 new. She left me in the frame. I'm keeping all of it. Mata read it. She reached across and took the Moleskine. She wrote underneath in her handwriting without pausing. Entry 1 new. He's going to be impossible about this forever. I'm keeping all of it too. She handed it back. He read it. He looked up. He smiled, the real one, the full one, the one his team had spent years trying to decode and had never quite managed because it was not a professional expression and was not meant for professional context. It was the room-changing one. The one that existed entirely outside the suit and the cufflinks and the composure. Mata pointed at him immediately. I need that on camera. Absolutely not. Sejin. Do not call Sejin. From down the hall, with the timing of a man who had been positioned for exactly this moment. I'm already filming. The documentary won its festival award 3 months later. Doyun accepted it on behalf of the film with a speech that was, characteristically, brief and precise and said exactly what it meant. The only thing required to make something true is the willingness to pay attention. Everything else follows from that. Mata, sitting in the audience, added entry 112 to her phone. He gave a speech. It was 12 sentences. I counted. I'm keeping all 12. The coffee machine was replaced. The go bag was unpacked. Not dramatically, not ceremonially, but on a Tuesday morning when Mata needed the bag for something else and pulled it out from under the bed and emptied it onto the floor and used it to carry cleaning supplies to the 3rd floor and simply never put the emergency contents back. The Moleskine ran out of pages. Doyun bought her 11 more. She filled them all, every entry in her handwriting, because the list had long since stopped being about him and started being about them, about the compound and the mornings and the work she did and the man who watched her do it like it was worth watching. In the 4th one, on the 1st page, in her handwriting, he watched the Spice Cabinet video 11 times. He is mine. I am keeping all of it. Now here is what this story is actually about, underneath everything funny and everything devastating and every entry on that list. It is about what happens when you stop letting the world define the value of what you do. Maid Jackson built something real with a mop and a ring light and the absolute refusal to believe that her work was less than art because the world had decided cleaning didn't count. She was right. The world was wrong. The festival crowd that stood up for her documentary was not moved by the cleaning. They were moved by the attention, hers to the work, his to her, and finally, together, theirs to the truth. It is about the difference between being watched and being witnessed. 847,000 followers watched Maid Jackson. One man watched her like she mattered. There is a version of the story where that is sinister, and Maid knew that version and carried it with her for 147 days in a go-bag under her bed. But witnessing, when it is honest, is not possession. It is presence. The most loving thing Doyoon ever did was learn the difference and let the documentary become hers. It is about the courage of the true sentence. Every near miss in the story, every cufflink straightened, every feeling filed under operational variable, every Thursday flight booked and not taken, was a failure not of feeling but of language. The feelings were always there. The willingness to say them out loud was the whole thing. For words, I'm gone on you. The entire story builds to those 4 words and earns them because the story knows they cost something. Saying the true thing always costs something. It is always worth it. And it is about the go-bag. Not just Maid's, though Maid's is the one under the bed. The one that never gets used. The one that eventually gets repurposed for cleaning supplies on a Tuesday without ceremony. Every person reading this has a version of it. The Thursday flight. The backup plan. The thing you keep packed because keeping it packed means you're choosing to stay rather than just being too afraid to leave. The moment you unpack it, not because you've decided forever, not because all the fear is gone, but because you need the bag for something else and the emergency it was packed for has quietly, without announcement, stopped feeling like an emergency. That is the moment you've arrived somewhere. Maid Jackson arrived somewhere. Jang Doyoon arrived somewhere. It was a kitchen. Morning. Good light. A moleskine on the table. A man watching a woman work like it was the most interesting thing he had ever seen, which, for him, it genuinely was. She deleted her socials. He kept the footage. She kept him. And that label on the shelf in the 3rd floor studio, the one that said Mata in clean block letters, the one she kept dusted every week without ever writing about why, stayed exactly where he put it. It is still there. To everyone who stayed until this last moment. Thank you. Genuinely. You gave this story the attention it was asking for, and that is not a small thing. If this told you something true about being seen, or about saying the thing, or about the go-bag under your bed, carry it with you. Drop in the comments whether you're a Mata or a Doyoon. Subscribe if you want more stories that feel like this. And share it with the person in your life who needs to hear that being known is not the same as being lost. It is, in fact, the whole point. That is the story. That has always been the story. The mop was just the beginning.